Who are we taking next?
Let's take Ted in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Whoops.
Oh.
Well, hi, Ted.
Wow, Ted, you had a glorious entry. Yeah. Hi, you're talking to Eric and V. Ted? Ted, are you there? Ted going once. Ted going twice.
Hello. Sorry.
Hey!
Hello.
I'm here.
No worries. If you've got the show on in the background, it might... Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, if you could take us off speaker and make sure that you're in a room where the show's not playing, we won't get feedback and stuff. That'll be good.
Yeah, I did.
Cool. Okay. What do you want to talk about?
Something Sam Harris brought up on his podcast recently, and something I've been thinking about a lot lately is it's called generic subjective continuity. And it's what a lot of not a lot, but a few naturalists believe happens after we die. So
Interesting.
Generic subjective continuity. I know what each of those words means, Ted.
yeah,
That does not.
philosophically.
I know what each of those words means, but I would love to learn about the subject. What the hell are you talking about?
So it says that generic subjective continuity says that whenever we die, we completely and utterly cease to exist. We decompose. The one who dies no longer exists. That consciousness has completely ended.
Yeah.
But because there will be consciousnesses that do come into existence after that person or animal's death, then that person or animal's death will not be followed by an experience of a black void or nothingness. Instead, we should conclude that because new consciousnesses will come to exist, that death will actually be followed by one of those new consciousnesses as opposed to nothingness.
So you're saying reincarnation, kind of?
No. Well, some people do call it naturalistic reincarnation. It has been called that because there's no soul. There's no, when I die, my soul won't go into a new body or anything like that. It's more simply that there will be consciousness after I die.
Interesting. Okay, well, I think the biggest question that I would have, because for a while I did actually kind of play around with the idea of reincarnation when I was exiting my Christian faith, and I like the idea of it, honestly. I think it's interesting. I guess I'm curious where that consciousness lives or exists, or how it exists outside of a physical body. I'd imagine that would be a requirement.
No, it isn't that it exists outside of a body. It's just that the same way that your brain, if our brains are responsible for consciousness, then because new brains will also be responsible for consciousnesses after I die, then there will be consciousness after I die. It won't be like...
It won't be your consciousness.
So it's just the concept
right,
that...
it won't be my consciousness.
So this is essentially just people or animals or conscious beings will continue to exist after your consciousness ends?
Yes, and because of that, that means that after I die, there will be experience after I die, as opposed to nothingness.
Oh, I've heard of this before, actually. This is not, I didn't know that this is what it was called, so thank you for the terminology. But I've actually talked with a couple different people who had this kind of view, and I mean, I agree with it. I guess the way that, to me, it makes it less helpful, just because the concept, when I say there is nothing after I die, I'm not saying that the rest of the universe fails to exist. I'm just saying I no longer exist, and that's a way that I use to describe that. Are there actually people who think that, like, beyond solipsists, obviously, when they die, everything ceases to exist? Like, is that what they're arguing against?
I don't know about that, but there are a lot of people I've heard call into other atheist shows and express concern for going into darkness or a black void after they die and spending eternity there. And I've also done a lot of searches on Twitter, and I've found that there are actually I found hundreds of people that say they are afraid of the black void after we die, or nothingness after we die, or eternal oblivion after we die. And Richard Dawkins also recently said that after we die, it will be peaceful oblivion. And so there's this myth. A lot of people refer to it as darkness and blackness. It's very prevalent in the atheist community, and we who are helping propagate the idea of generic subjective continuity we want to offer an alternative view to that, the black void.
Right. Okay. I totally get it, and I agree with you that the best way to go about that is to be like, hey, you know what? If you're scared of not existing anymore, or if you are picturing this dark void, that's not actually accurate. And I get that 100%. And I think that's a very useful step to take in terms of, especially people coming out of a religion where they thought there was a heaven and now they're realizing there isn't. I'm super curious about the desire to, turn this, is this a philosophical concept now? Why use these big words for it, I guess is my question.
Sam Harris recently brought it up in his last podcast called The Paradox of Death. And so it is gaining some popularity as far as that's concerned, but it's based on something the philosopher Tom Clark said in his, he's the one who coined the term in his essay, Death, Nothingness, and Subjectivity. It's on naturalism.org. And it's, it is a, we're trying to make it more visceral for people to understand that, it's all in philosophical lingo, but it is actually an extremely simple concept.
So you know what? This is the kind of thing that I would love to get people's input on, because I'm sure people are watching this going, wow, this being put in a very, very generic way, or very, not a generic, it's being put in a very esoteric way. But essentially you're just saying after you die, other things will continue to be conscious. Everything won't end. It's just you. I personally don't derive extra comfort by that.
Me neither, actually. I think it's kind of I don't like it. I wish it weren't the case, but it's I think we need to tell each other the truth, and if it is true, then we need to face this truth. And
I agree. I don't know. I think that I'd love to see in the comments, and maybe we could put up a poll about whether or not people think that, first of all, framing it in an esoteric way, calling it, generic subjective continuity when it comes to death, and batting that around is either something that A, is going to derive comfort, or B, just be a game that we like to play with each other, something that we can toss around philosophically, because personally, I'm not keen on it. It's not, I don't know, man.
I would suggest checking out the talks. There's talks on YouTube by Tom Clark, and definitely checking out Sam Harris's podcast that I mentioned. And so, it is very relevant, but at first it's not exactly clear why it's relevant, but it actually does give us a good, there's many reasons to be a good person, but it gives us yet one more reason to be a good person too.
So, on the one hand, it's always good to have a tool that is going to work in certain situations. And I think that this is one of those tools. So if you are talking to an apologist who is throwing big words at you, and you are doing your best to kind of combat that with your own philosophy, that would be a great place to bring that in. Or if you're talking with somebody who might be deconverting or might be philosophically minded and asking these questions, pointing them in that direction and giving them a phrase to look up to find more information, great, super, super helpful, 100%. I think the thing that is most interesting to me is that this doesn't feel like, this feels like a given in a way. Like, if we believe that there are other conscious beings outside of ourselves and we are not contingent in making the world happen, then of course, when we die, everything else is going to continue, right? It feels kind of like the antithesis of this would be somebody saying, when I die, nothing else happens outside of me. And I haven't engaged with a lot of people who think that way. So I'm just curious about the other side of this argument and who might hold that position, if that makes sense.
Well, I definitely read Tom Clark's essay, but recently in Anel Seth's new book, it's called Being You, he actually, I believe it was in the first chapter, he said that he gets comfort out of the idea of there being oblivion after we die, because, you know, he says, he compares it to being unconscious and sleeping.
Sure.
And that's not the case. We won't be in, we will not be resting in peace after we die.
No.
It'll be yet more experience after we die instead.
I feel like this is, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, yes, there will be more experience, but if you just say that to somebody, what they're going to take away is that you believe that you, as an entity, as a consciousness, will continue to experience things after you die.
Especially with the reincarnation portion. Any kind of,
Like, I like the concept. I think it's beautiful, and I think that it's comforting. I find it comforting, at least. I'm super curious about, like, where practically this worldview would come up against opposition and what that conversation would look like. So if you theory that Ted is positing here, call in. I want to hear your side of this too.
Yeah, and I want to see this in the comments. I know we've got to get to the next call, but Ted, thank you for calling in. And I
You're welcome.
Yeah, I hope you saw benefit in the call.
I did. All right, thank you both. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Bye.
I now have a new bit of esoteric language to add to my general
Your repertoire.
basket. Yeah, my repertoire of things that make me insufferable.
I can't wait. All right.
I guess that's one way to shut somebody down. That's not a good way to do it. Like, I could imagine bringing up that subject of being like, all right, you know, let's talk about
generic subjective continuity.
Absolutely, because that's what you're talking about, right?
I mean, and that is where it could be very useful. Like, if you
want to shut them down.
Right, and there are situations where you need to shut someone down. So if you can be like, oh, you're talking about this.
Ooh, I know who. Those elders at the church who just are the smartest ones in the group and who are just going to try and run circles around you. You drop that and just see how quickly they get a little bit more humble. I'm good with that.
Yeah, there are situations where I think it would be useful. I just haven't encountered the opposite of it, really, in any way that is not just semantic, right? Like, if someone says, I die and then there is nothing, yeah, technically you can interpret it as I die and then everything ceases to exist around me. But what you have to understand most of the time is that they're just talking about their own subjective experience goes away.
It does, or at least there's that break. And really, honestly, that talking about sleep, I had a bit of an existential crisis. I remember about a year ago, you and I were talking about the teleporter problem. Mm-hmm. And this idea of any break in your continuity of consciousness. What if the old you is gone, vaporized, and you're just a new you with all old you's memories, you know? And it really, it brought back that childhood fear of going to sleep at night. Because I'm like, there's a break in my continuity. Like, it's wild, but it's a fun kind of path to go down. But I know that we're going really, really long on that call. So let's move on